And isn't government, massive government intervention, what's really needed in the healthcare system, which private enterprise has plundered and which then, for so many Americans, has abandoned? Main Street gets a lot of lip service, and certainly has done over the last few months, but it hasn't been the principal concern of those in charge to date. As Damon just mentioned a few minutes ago, it was really shocking when the automakers came to Washington for their handout, and suddenly it was an outrage that anybody that actually built something that Americans could use would have a good health care system and a decent living wage. And the Wall Street executives were never questioned about the private jets they flew to D.C. in, and no one demanded that they agree to massive changes in the way they did business in exchange for the bailout. So some people in this room are going to have to be the people who take up the challenge that Bob issued to make sure that Main Street is heard in this debate. We must make sure that this conference will be remembered as the moment when control over the debate over solutions to the crisis was wrested from the people who caused the crisis, and that the people on Main Street end up with not only with the protection they need in the long term, but with some relief in the short term. Thank you.
Thank you, all three of you. Those are excellent presentations, and we have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. So we have a microphone right here if you want to come up, or if you think you can be heard from your seat, go ahead. And you can direct your question to anybody or make it general. Anybody with a question? Yes. Why don't you identify yourself, if you would?
Bill Neal, I read about the financial crisis for a large email audience and online. My question, Bob, comes down to you, the rating agencies that have failed some of this. They have a lot of employees, in the tens of thousands, cumulatively, the three major rating agencies. How do we make them into public utilities or nonprofits? Could the massive number of business schools and MBAs turned out every year, in the tens of thousands, be brought in some way structurally? That it's a finishing year for your graduation, that they form. Could the faculty be neutral enough to form the backbone for making these public agencies, and could we get MEAs somehow into the public flow? Would their values be different enough from the culture that we've seen that has led to this? Because I think you have to have a value chain for the people that are going to staff it. Where are we going to find this?
Bob?
Well, you know, an interesting but imperfect analogy is the PCAOB, which took over from the Accountants Trade Association the task of regulating the accounting industry. Now, it's imperfect, but it's pretty good. And this is a halfway step. We didn't nationalize the accounting profession, but we turned the oversight of it over to an agency that's publicly accountable, not one that's accountable to Wall Street, as is the case with FINRA. And in the case of the credit rating agencies, they're accountable to no one. So I think the first best would be to create some kind of a hybrid institution. I think PCAOB is a .org. It's not officially part of the government, but it's a nonprofit, and it pays salaries above civil service salaries. And you know, you interview these 10,000 people one at a time, and you decide which of them are capable of redemption. Because there are all of these convoluted plans about how you change the compensation formula to get rid of the conflicts of interest. I think the conflicts of interest are inherent as long as these are private profit-making institutions that are responsible only to their shareholders. And I think the sin has been so extreme that the appropriate remedy is capital punishment. What the rating agencies do have to be understood as solving an information problem that is a public good. they basically set interest rates in the same way that the Fed sets interest rates. I mean, if you are a corporation or a perpetrator of derivatives or a municipality, the rating agencies determine what interest rates you have to pay in the marketplace. And they've done an abysmal job because they've been corrupted by the way that they're paid. So my first choice would be make them public utilities, make them public or nonprofit institutions. I think if you change the incentives in the way people are paid, that changes norms. And in this economy, if you pay a senior person a couple of $100,000, that's a pretty good salary. In the whole history of the federal public service until it was disparaged by Reagan and then Clinton, it was a place that attracted people who wanted to be respected as professionals, who wanted to earn professional salaries and to feel at the end of the day that they'd done a good job, and who felt that they didn't need to get super rich. I think there are a lot of people out there who are still like that. So the Federal Reserve Bank of New York right now is hiring because it needs bodies. It needs people to go in and try and understand what the hell the banks are doing. It's the only financial institution in New York that's hiring right now, and there are a lot of people looking for jobs. So I don't think it's beyond